Trick Williams defeats Ethan Page to become the brand new NXT champion during the premiere episode on the CW network, with CM Punk as the special guest referee in Chicago, Illinois. Speaking of Punk, he gave the NXT fans free Chicago pizza following NXT's premiere on the CW. Roxanne Perez retains the NXT Women's Championship, defeating Julia thanks to interference from a returning Cora Jade. Speaking of NXT, there is a brand new logo as well as brand new NXT Championship belts following the show's premiere on the CW. Wesley Lee defeats his former Rascals tag team partner Zachary Wentz in a street fight. We've got the ratings for Collision's Grand Slam episode from Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York. We've also got the ratings for Monday's edition of Raw. Of course, the Bad Blood Go Home episode on USA Network. WWE reportedly was disappointed with the Raw ring collapse spot in the last Monster Standing match this past Monday. And Roman Reigns' plans for the Royal Rumble next year possibly have been revealed. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Let's begin with the premiere of NXT on the CW network last night. We have a brand new NXT champion, Trick Williams, winning the championship for the second time in his career. NXT capped off its CW network debut with an NXT championship match between Ethan Page and Trick Williams. Former WWE champion CM Punk served as the special guest referee for this occasion, previously promising to call it right down the middle. Ultimately, Page emerged on the losing end while Williams stood victorious, with streamers surrounding him in celebration. In the match's closing moments, Williams delivered a big knee, which sent Page bouncing off the ropes into a pinning position on Williams, similar to the ending sequence of NXT Heatwave. With Williams and Page exhausted by this point, Punk helped lift both competitors back to their feet. Page kicked Williams twice, to which Williams responded with an uppercut and a Uranagi. Much to Punk's dismay, Page then nailed Williams with Punk's finishing maneuver, the GTS. When Williams kicked out of it, Page looked for an ego's edge. Unfortunately for Page, Williams jumped down from his shoulders and connected with a trick shot for the 3 count. To add more salt to Page's proverbial wound, Punk laid out Page with a GTS as Williams stood above with his newly regained and redesigned NXT Championship. Upon his victory, Williams begins his second reign as NXT Champion. Meanwhile, Page's run comes to an end at 86 days. Now, as I mentioned, the fans in Chicago, Illinois not only got to see the premiere episode of NXT on the CW, but they got a little bit more. The celebrations for fans in attendance at the Allstate Arena in Chicago didn't stop when NXT went off the air. Footage was shared from the NXT Twitter account of CM Punk in the ring with Williams when he said, quote, "I don't want to cut the champ celebration short, but I gotta tell you a little secret. On your way out, ladies and gentlemen, get yourself some of Lou Malnati's Pizza on Us. Share with your friends, share with your neighbors. Remember, I love you. We are." At which point, Trick Williams would complete the familiar phrase with a definitive NXT. Now, the pizzeria has been serving deep dish pizza to the residents of Chicago since 1971. Roxanne Perez is still the NXT Women's Champion, thanks to some help from a former friend. Roxanne Perez retained her NXT Women's Championship over Julia on the debut episode of NXT on the CW, thanks to the help of a returning Cora Jade. Jade has been on the shelf since January after suffering a torn ACL and made her return to WWE's developmental brand during the opener of the show to hit a DDT to Julia on the outside of the ring to help Perez win her match. Perez and Julia locked up to start off the match, then traded pinfalls back and forth. Julia beat down Perez into the ropes before Perez got her opponent out of the ring and hit her with a dive. Back inside the ring, Perez went to the top, but Julia went right after her and hit a suplex to the champion. She held on with a bridge, but Perez kicked out. The women battled back and forth, and Perez locked in a crossface, but Julia was able to get to the ropes. Julia countered a pop rocks with a knee, but Perez kicked out again. Perez was able to connect with her finisher, but Julia rolled out beneath the ropes. Both women battled on the outside of the ring before being knocked down. The referee got to the count of 9 before both women made it back in the ring. Perez slid back out once again and grabbed her championship. While the referee was distracted, Jade, clad in a hoodie as a disguise, took Julia out before throwing her back in the ring. Perez hit a second pop rocks and got the pinfall victory before Jade unmasked, revealing herself to the champion. Now, as I mentioned, it was the premiere episode of NXT on the CW, which led to a lot of redesigns last night, including a brand new NXT logo, which you can see right there. It was first revealed by WrestleVotes, who said, quote, "As first discussed last week on WrestleVotes Radio, exclusively on Sportskeeda Wrestling Backstage Pass, NXT is undergoing a rebranding with tonight's move to the CW. We've received the new logo, and it's just as we described. Check it out and subscribe here." So it looks like indeed that was the logo, and it was all over NXT indeed last night. But it wasn't just a new logo. We got brand new championship bouts last night on NXT 2. Now, ahead of last night's CW debut of NXT, reports indicated that NXT would be undergoing changes to its presentation. The first change was revealed to be the brand's logo, which transformed from a white and gold color scheme to a silver and black. At the beginning of last night's broadcast, WWE Senior Vice President of Talent Development Creative Shawn Michaels unveiled the second and third in tandem. Underneath a black sheet laid the remodeled versions of the NXT and NXT Women's Championships, respectively. Quote, "You know, we can't have a new NXT on a new network without new championship titles," Michael said as he pulled away the sheet. The previous iterations of the NXT and NXT Women's Championships were highlighted by a giant X on their middle plates, whereas these new titles have the NXT lettering in the centers. Obviously, we now saw that Roxanne Perez still has the Women's Championship, or Trick Williams has the NXT Championship. After introducing the new championship belts, Michaels hyped up the Chicago crowd and prepared to ask them a signature question. But before he could, his D-Generation X comrade Paul Triple H Levesque interjected with the very question, "Are you ready?" Levesque and Michaels finally capped off the segment by asking the question one more time in unison, with the cheers of the Allstate Arena echoing behind them. Now, Wesley may have put his issues with MSK and the Rascals finally to bed. Wesley outlasted Zachary Wentz to win a street fight during the NXT Network premiere on the CW. It was about the sort of risky stunts of violence, ending with a chain-assisted Meteora through a steel chair for Lee to score the victory pinfall over Wentz. A result that worked against the grain, however, with the moments of reluctant emotion proving to be costly for an in-control Wentz, screaming, "I don't want to do this," as he stood over his former tag team title-winning partner with a steel chair in hand, thus allowing the villainous Lee to take advantage and survive the contest. With his victory, Lee scored a measure of revenge for his previous loss to Wentz during NXT No Mercy at the beginning of September, and if this should be the end of their rivalry, it might also spell the end of Wentz's crossover to WWE from TNA for the foreseeable future. He and Trey Miguel had earned an opportunity at the NXT Tag Team Championships in September. However, Miguel was later written off television in a parking lot ambush at the hands of Lee. This was reportedly a creative decision spurred on by a legitimate minor surgery that Miguel needed at the time. Now, let's talk about the ratings for Collision Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium. Of course, it was taped in the week on Wednesday. It aired on Saturday on TNT. All Elite Wrestling's festivities at Arthur Ashe Stadium continued this past weekend as the company presented the first ever Grand Slam edition of AEW Collision on September 28th. In what was the biggest Collision episode of the year thus far, fans in Queens, New York got to witness an AEW World Trios Championship match, grudge matches like Jamie Hayter versus Saraya, and Hangman Page versus Jeff Jarrett. They also got to see Kazuchika Okada go one-on-one with Sammy Guevara in an AEW Continental Championship Eliminator match. But how many fans tuned into TNT on Saturday to witness all of the action? Well, according to WrestleNomics, the September 28th episode of AEW Collision averaged a total of 435,000 viewers, a big increase of 25% from previous week's 347,000 viewers. This figure also marks Collision's highest average viewership since the August 24th episode, which acted as AEW's go-home show before All In London. The 435,000 figure is also a huge increase of 44% on the trailing 4-week average that stood at 301,000, although the trailing 4 weeks did include the episode that went head-to-head with SmackDown on September 6th. There was also big movement in the key 18 to 49 demographic, as the September 28th show earned a 0.13, which is up 8% from the 0.12 earned on September 21st, and up 30% from the trailing 4-week average that came at a 0.10. This was also the highest number in the 18 to 49 demographic that Collision has earned since the August 24th episode in Cardiff, Wales, and led to Collision finishing third in place for all cable originals that aired in primetime hours of Saturday night. WrestleNomics confirmed that college football dominated the ratings on cable for Saturday night, while the season 50 premiere of Saturday Night Live earned one of the highest ratings in years on September 28th. Now, speaking of ratings, we also have the ratings for Monday's edition of Raw on USA Network. Of course, it was the go-home episode for Bad Blood this coming weekend. The September 30th edition of Monday Night Raw bounced back in overall viewership and key demographic ratings after a massive decline last week. The final Raw of September saw overall viewership rise by 13% from 1.339 million last week to 1.516 million this week, as per WrestleNomics. The number also represents a 2% rise compared to the trailing 4-week average, while the rise also resulted in the red brand faring far better this September compared to the same period last year. The 18 to 49 demographic also saw a similar gain in overall viewership, as the show performed 12% better than the September 23rd edition of Raw, with a rating of a 0.48 compared to a 0.46 last week. Both the trailing 4-week average and the month's performance compared to September 2023 saw a 4% gain. Last week's Raw had one of the lowest numbers in the show's history, slumping in overall viewership and key demographic ratings. This past week's show has performed better despite going up against 2 NFL games, the Detroit Lions versus Seattle Seahawks and Miami Dolphins versus Tennessee Titans, with the former raking in 15 million viewers and the latter 5.6 million viewers. The show ranked in the top 10 of primetime telecasts for adults in the 18 to 49 demographic on Monday nights, with the first hour registering a 0.50 rating, while the second and third hours had ratings of 0.49 and 0.45 respectively, as per Programming Insider. Now, in terms of the quarter-hour ratings, these come courtesy of WrestleNomics, so shout out to them and be sure to subscribe to their Patreon service. Of course, Monday night's Raw, which emanated from the Ford Center in Evansville, Indiana, was the show's final stop before this weekend's Bad Blood Premium Live event. This week's show was also the last 3-hour broadcast, as Raw is set to run for 2 hours until it switches to Netflix in January. As you can see, in terms of the quarter-hour ratings, largely they went to type a little bit below the recent average, with the big spike coming in CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's Hell in a Cell face-off in the 9 p.m. hour. Speaking of Raw, of course, a big spot from Raw this past Monday was the ring collapse in the last Monster Standing match. Now, it has been reported that the spot didn't go as originally planned and that the way it came off wasn't like backstage in WWE. The report comes from WrestleVotes during a recent Q&A on Backstage Pass, where it was stated, quote, "This is specifically talking about the broken ring spot. Let's just say it didn't go as planned. They didn't like the way it came off. They loved the performance of both those guys. The match itself was well praised. I mean, the crowd was electric. I just think the actual spot of the ring breaking didn't have the impact as it has in the past. A lot of people expected it. I did have a source who was there last night. The internal reaction instantly was oof, not as big as we would have hoped. I don't know if it was a mechanical thing or just the impact that it made." Now, the ring collapse would also see the return of Seth Rollins to Monday Night Raw, getting some revenge on Big Bronson Reed. Rollins had been written off television after being the recipient of multiple tsunamis from Reed weeks ago. And finally, Roman Reigns will be at the Royal Rumble next year, but what will he be doing? Well, the 38th WWE Royal Rumble takes place at the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana on February 1st, 2025. The official poster for the upcoming PLE was recently revealed, with Roman Reigns among the featured WWE stars. WrestleVotes has now revealed what Reigns is likely to be doing at the Royal Rumble during a Backstage Pass live Q&A, saying, quote, "From just the short questions that I asked that I got back, he's probably more likely going to be in the Rumble for the first time in a while, as opposed to a singles standalone match. Roman's on the Rumble poster, likely to be in the Rumble match." Now, the 2024 Royal Rumble saw then undisputed WWE Universal Champion defend his title against AJ Styles, LA Knight, and Randy Orton in a fatal four-way match. Reigns was last in the men's Royal Rumble match back in 2020, which saw Drew McIntyre victorious. The Royal Rumble in 2021, 2022, and 2023 would all fall within Reigns' epic, undisputed WWE Universal Championship run. 2025 would mark the 10-year anniversary of Reigns' only men's Royal Rumble match victory, which took place in January of 2015. But there you go, guys. Latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.